When our pandemic became a real issue, I stated one Sunday that I thought that this would be an excellent time for all of us to redefine value. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Only it's not today. It's late Saturday evening. I usually video my message Saturday afternoon so I can upload it. But I find that this week, this is perhaps the most difficult talk I've ever put together. And I hope that it's the most important message that I have given today. Redefining value. I chose that topic for today, hoping that I would really give you some things to think about. And some of these things aren't pleasant, I'm going to tell you to begin with. But I think it's gravely important that we do think seriously about redefining value as we know it. Too often times we define value as money. But I think there are several things that are much more important, have much more value in life than money. One of those is truth. Another one is freedom. And yet another one is justice and equality. Let's talk about truth a little bit. And let's apply truth to money. One example, just one. There are 3.2 million public school teachers in this country. And Google tells me that the average teacher's salary in the United States today is $60,000 a year. I looked up online and I found that the average salary for a member of the NBA is $7.7 million per year. The average salary of someone a player in the NFL is $3 million a year. In professional baseball, with the Giants and the Cubs, $4.4 million a year. So if we equate value to money, then that tells me that we value watching sports 50 times more than we value what our children are taught, their education. If we ask ourselves, how will the winner who wins the Super Bowl or the World Series affect humanity for generations to come? How will that affect that? And transversely, how will what we teach our children and their education affect society in generations to come? Something to ponder. I truly don't think that we value the entertainment of professional sports 50 times more than we value the education of our children. But I think what has happened here, my friends, is that we've become addicted to entertainment. We've become addicted to watching movies. Our children are addicted to video games. And if we look at all of these forms of entertainment, sports, winners and losers, movies, the stars in 80% of the movies are blowing up stuff, force and violence. 90% of our video games are all about force and violence, winning and losing. Is that the direction we want humanity to take? That's enough to think about with truth. Looking for truth, I think, should be really important, very valuable in our lives. Freedom. We do have the freedom to think as we choose, if we aren't too busy being entertained. But those freedoms that we have enjoyed in this country from the time we formed this democratic republic 240 years ago, they have been encroached upon severely. In 1971, there was a lawyer by the name of Lewis Powell, and he wrote something today that is called the Powell Memo. And I'm going to ask or encourage that each of you go to Google and just type in Powell Memo, Powell, and read it. He introduced that to the United States Chamber of Commerce in 1971. And it was a very detailed plan, step by step, to take a government by the people, of the people, and for the people, away from the people, and turn it into a government by, of, and by, and for the corporations. That was 50 years ago. What has happened, my friends? This Powell Memo is the force, is the guideline where the corporate empire seized control of our government. It also was the foundation for groups like the Heritage Foundation and ALEC. Click on ALEC. Bring it up on Google. About three items down, you'll see ALEC exposed. You'll see just what this corporate empire, what kind of control it has over our government. ALEC has on its table right now a constitutional amendment draft. And the minute they get 6 more Republican governors, they will bring it before the Senate and they will pass it. They will ratify this amendment. And what that amendment does is abolish the 17th Amendment to the Constitution, whereby that provides for the election of senators. Freedom. We used to have the freedom to protest in this country, to vote. Voting is being suppressed. And to protest, We can't. You remember the show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? I now call it the philosophy of the rich and ruthless. Look what happened for Occupy Wall Street. They broke it up. When you make the rich and the ruthless feel uncomfortable, they're not going to let it happen. Standing Rock. They brought in tanks and M16s and military units to throw our Native Americans off their own land, and their purpose there was to peacefully stand and resist polluting of our watersheds. Freedom. It's something I hope that we value very highly. We've got a lot of work to do to save and expand our freedom as human beings, our freedom of having a democratic republic. Oh, this Mr. Powell that I was talking about, I firmly believe when he brought that memo out in 1971 that he should be tried for treason and incarcerated for the rest of his life. No, no, no. They didn't do that to Mr. Powell. They made him a Supreme Court justice because he was so bright. That brings us to the next thing that has value, that I think it is very important, and that's justice and equality. Listen to the news this week. Justice and equality. We find that the pandemic of hatred is running more rampant than the COVID virus and has a far more deadly effect, adverse effect on humanity than any virus. The disease of hatred runs throughout our system. And as things stand right now, everybody talks about it with rage, but nothing is done. The system isn't changed. If we want it changed, then folks, we are going to have to change it. We want our children to be educated and be taught meaningful, important things, then we have to demand that they are. If we want the freedom to assemble and the freedom to elect our representatives to serve and perform the duties of governance, we have to bring that about. The system isn't going to change. We have to change it. There's a lot for us to do, folks. So much. And we can either do that or we can watch the game or turn on Netflix. Now, my talk thus far has been, how shall I call it? Dark, not uplifting, certainly not warm and fuzzy. But I haven't mentioned yet the most important item of value to our species. The most important task before us, the most valuable thing that we can create, my friends, is 4 little letters. And you might think I'm going to say love, but it's not. Love is within. the task before us, the most important task before every human being at this point in time, is hope. Hope. As we look at the truths and we think about freedom and we think about justice, it can make us feel quite hopeless and helpless. That's why hope is the most important tool we have for the preservation of life on this planet. The old Motel 6 guy, Tom Bodette, he said, you know, they say that a person needs just 3 things to be happy. 1 is someone to love. 2 is something to do. And 3 is something to hope for. Well, folks, as we go forward through this pandemic of virus, this pandemic of the loss of freedom, this pandemic of injustice and inequality and hatred, hope is the salvation for all of those conditions. I heard it said once that hope is like a star, not to be seen in the sunshine of prosperity, and only to be discovered in the night of adversity. Give some thought to hope. These times right now really tax that, really are discouraging in almost every facet of our lives. But I heard Barack Obama say, and this is how I'm going to close, and I'm paraphrasing, I may get it wrong a bit, but it needs to be said again and again and again. If you are feeling helpless and hopeless, the best thing you can do is to go out and do something. If you're sitting on your butt waiting for the good times to come, you're going to have a long wait. The spiral is going the other way. But when you go out and do good things, you create hope for other people. In doing those good things, you create a light of hope for other people, and they start doing good things as well. And when you see what they're doing, then you are filled with hope. Hope is more contagious and more energizing than any virus, than any army, than any negative force on humanity. Hope, my friends, that is our light. It must be our light now. And as you sit and think about redefining value in your life, it's important that you know the truth about what's going on. It's important that you be able to see how important our freedom is. And it's important that we work to have a just and fair and equal society and government. But none of that can take place without your hope, without my hope. This hope, with this hope we can create a global society that is based on nurturing and caring and empathy and acceptance and respect, rather than a global society based on force and violence and domination. Hope. It's the magic ingredient required for the sustenance of life as we know it. And I so believe that is the truth, and so it is.